You're listening to Travel Nursing and Allied Life, hosted by TravCon.
Welcome to the Exhibitor Minute of the Travel Nursing and Allied Life podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Freitag. This week, we'll be discussing some of the challenges travelers have experienced while on assignment and what their solutions were. With me today is Valerie Gale, a registered nurse who is Vice President of Clinical Excellence at Nomad Health. Thanks for joining us, Valerie.
No, I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Michelle.
We're recording this in late November, but it looks like you have a jump on Christmas and you've already got your tree up.
I do. Yes, it is a family tradition that we try to get it up at least a couple days before December starts, but the decorating will go on for several days still.
Fantastic. Excellent. Now, what I've been interested in is this week we're going to talk about sort of what difficulties and challenges that travelers have gotten into while on assignment. And I understand you take phone calls and help clinical coach through them. But before we get to that, I'd like to hear a little bit about your background and how you got into staffing.
Sure. Well, again, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here after getting to be at my first TravCon this year and just that whole experience. It's really a delight to get to spend some time with you. So thanks for having me. I actually don't think about myself as getting into staffing as much as I'm in healthcare. And so this happens to be the part of healthcare that we're working in right now. But interestingly enough, I first came to Texas almost 30 years ago as a travel nurse. And so that is how my career really got started. I only anticipated traveling for a couple of years and being in Texas that long and then heading back to my family in Canada. But here I am 30 years later, still in Texas. So the bulk of my nursing career has been here.
That happened with me too. I came down expecting 1 to 2 years of travel nursing. And 20 years later, I'm still down here.
Yeah. I mean, to say 30 years makes me like croak a little bit, but I just tell everyone I graduated when I was just a tiny baby.
Exactly.
So yes, I'm 30 years later, here we are. And, I spent a good part of my nursing career at the bedside. So multiple different roles, tried to get as much experience on as many different units and many different nursing spaces as I could. That included home health and hospice and really trying to see that full continuum of care for patients. But eventually sort of migrated into more leadership roles and then into patient safety and quality. And about 5 years ago was contacted by a phenomenal CNO that I had worked with at one of our health systems who attracted me into this part of the business. And so I had the privilege for several years to be with one of the largest healthcare staffing agencies in the US, leading the credentialing organization. And then that really led into this opportunity with Nomad in the clinical space. And so it's been a really neat way for, I say, my career to kind of come full circle. I remember, as you probably do too, like almost 30 years ago, I think we mailed documents in to get everything done. And like when we can get somebody to the bedside in 2 weeks, I'm like, oh gosh, I think that took 7 months, like to get my documents through. So wow, how far we have come. But that's really the nutshell of how I got to where I am today.
One of the other committee members on TravCon is Cynthia Kinnis, and I think she basically started back where you are at the mailing stage. I kind of came in the fax era, but she talks about literally mailing contracts to people.
Yep,
and then receiving them back. I couldn't even imagine.
Yep, it's wild.
And tell us a bit about Nomad Health and how they contribute to the industry.
Sure. Well, Nomad is the first Joint Commission certified healthcare marketplace for clinicians. And so we really have been on a mission. Our CEO is Alexi Nazem. I know you had Alexi with you. Wow, like almost 2 years ago now. I couldn't believe, I thought the date was wrong when I looked up the old podcast. But we're on a mission really to remove every kind of clunky obstacle that stands between a healthcare professional. You probably hear me abbreviate that HP. I try not to say a whole lot of abbreviations, but we really intentional about HPs and the patients they're caring for. So how can we most efficiently make sure that clinicians, nurses, allied health professionals are doing the work they need to be doing when they're supposed to be doing it. And it's up to us to really remove every obstacle between them and the patients.
You made a distinction there at the start of it. You said a healthcare marketplace. Can you talk a little bit more about why that is such a distinction from a regular staffing company?
Sure. I think probably the biggest difference is that because we're a recruiterless model, which doesn't mean we're a people-less model, but we don't have recruiters, which can tend to, channel and push HPs to take one position over another. Where there's benefit for the healthcare staffing company, for example, we can tend to try to plug HPs where we feel like they need to go. The difference at the marketplace, which I think is really cool, is that nurses, allied health professionals want choice. They want their voice to be kind of what leads and directs their careers. And so with the marketplace, anyone can get online at any given time, whatever's convenient for them, all hours of the day or night. And you can see all the information that otherwise would have been probably hidden to some degree from you or only given to you in pieces and parts. It's very transparent. Pay rates are there. You know where you're going. What the hospital is, the patient ratios. So all of that is there, and you're really deciding as a clinician, where do I want to go to work? These 5 look interesting. And you can kind of do all of those at the same time. There's opportunity to apply for multiple jobs at the same time too, and see which one really best fits your needs. So I kind of love that.
And this is very timely because just the previous podcast episode was us discussing a recruiter versus a recruiterless model, benefits on both sides. It's really about what fits the traveler. Hey, I'm new to this. I want people. Hey, I've done this quite a bit. I don't want people. So it's really a good fit. People have options out there. Now, even though you're a recruiterless model and you don't have necessarily a recruiter that you come to if you have issues, that's kind of your role in Nomad, where someone's on assignment, they come up and they have a challenge or an issue and they cannot figure out, hey, what should I do in this position? You have got a clinical consulting role where you help guide people along. Can you give us a couple of examples of what travelers have faced and how you managed to help them figure out what the best solution was?
Sure. No, I love that. And again, I think it's important to know recruiter less, and I didn't have a chance to listen to that last podcast in the full thing, or the full podcast, but I definitely, recruiters is one thing to be recruiterless, but that doesn't mean we're peopleless. And so I appreciate your comment. I think that's where not only our team, which is new, again, talk about what's changed. The clinical excellence team at Nomad has come into place in 2022. So it went from a team of me in January. We're now a team of 8 people strong and growing. And you're right. I think it's no surprise the pressures that are out there and facing HPs every single day. The results of the survey that came out from Gypsy Nurse, so telling, right? What people are looking for. And it's that still a connection, right? It's we're not losing the connection with the clinicians at Nomad. We're making sure that the moments that we spend with them are meaningful. And so that we're available when they need us the most. I think while technology does what technology should do and people do what people should do, we've taken it a step further. And that's, I think, where clinical coaching comes in, where it's now we have clinicians doing with clinicians what clinicians are looking for. So you're right. It can be 2 a.m. and I'm stressed because I got 2 more patients and now my patient ratio is 8-to-1. And what I really love is to be able to debrief with a nurse in the morning so that somebody can talk me through that and give me strategies for how I can deal with that while I'm on the unit. And so we've been able to do that. I've so many great examples. I think probably one of the ones that really is been kind of, I guess, most dear to me, because I just really see it again as this advocacy for nurses and for healthcare professionals that are at the bedside. And we had a nurse in particular, and she has a medical condition that had been explained and shared with the facility before, and she can appear to be, because of the condition, it can sometimes look like she might be intoxicated or have something else. It's very brief periods of time. And so she was apparently observed at the hospital in this state at one particular time. And so following hospital protocol, they ordered a drug test on her, thinking that it might be a medical, medication diversion issue, something like that. Well, before the results came back, they actually canceled her contract.
Wow.
And so she ended up then on the phone with one of the members of our team, really talking her through it. She's devastated, of course, because it had been something she'd been very upfront about and that had been accepted. And again, the hospital, following what would be normal hospital protocol, canceled the assignment and left her kind of stranded, of course,
Hanging.
because livelihood is now in the balance. So we were able to really coach her through that and share back with the facility the results. The results came back negative, so her drug screen was perfectly clear, and they were able to then do coaching and education at the facility. We decided it wouldn't be best to send her back there because even though they offered for her contract to continue, it just felt awkward to her. But we were able to place her immediately in another hospital. And so that really is just such a great example about, sometimes it's just easy to sort of walk on, right, and leave it alone. But what we saw again in those results that just came out in the voice of the travel nurse is it's that feeling like you're part of the team. And that we were able to then reassure her that not only had we been her voice, but we had gone back to them and they had done something about it. And it creates this learning opportunity for all of us that just leads to healthier workspaces.
It also meant she didn't have a black mark on her record. She wasn't a DNR at that facility. And
that's right.
Yes, there was education done, but I really feel like you can sort of clear the air. You feel as a healthcare professional, you feel terrible that this happened. So if it's cleared that, yes, you're welcome to come back, we're really sorry, we miscalculated, that's really nice to have somebody in your corner to help make that communication, because they might not have done it just straight with the travel nurse.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Exactly right.
Good work with that one. What other challenges have popped up?
Well, I think you made a comment when we were first sort of introducing this part about case studies, and that it's, once a traveler's on assignment is then when we can get engaged. And I think the really cool part of the way that we've structured our team is that we actually want to engage in those meaningful moments even before HPs go on assignment. And so one of the ways I know everyone knows as part of the process is testing. So we have to do competency exams and all of that prior to going on assignment. And so what we have is a process in place where if a nurse or allied health professional doesn't do well on their first exam, we have a team that actually goes in, reviews the content, creates custom education. So it's individual specific if the clinician's interested. And we provide them with those education plans. We suggest 2 to 3 days of study. They can also then reach out. We stay in connection with them. So if they want to have a one-on-one education coaching call, we had a specific case a few weeks ago, and testing isn't for everybody. We all know that. We all went through school, right? So there's sometimes people just freeze and don't test well. Doesn't mean they don't have the knowledge, but they could just be nervous or whatever. And so we had one specific incident where the nurse didn't do well in the dysrhythmia exam. We know how critically important that is. Well, because she didn't do well, she just kind of wanted to shut down. She was like, I don't even want to take the pharmacology exam. I'm not great with testing, et cetera. Well, one of our clinical excellence leaders connected with her. She spent time reviewing strips. They had great dialogue back and forth, prepared her really well for the dysrhythmia exam. She was able to take it the second time, pass with flying colors, and then said, and yes, I'm going to take the pharmacology exam. And so again, it was just like this boost of confidence. It's not only our commitment to the HP to make sure they're the best prepared, but to our clients and to our healthcare facilities to make sure we are delivering clinically excellent nurses to the bedside. So,
and I think that's one of the sort of the struggles that healthcare travelers have. Some of them have no problem with it, but others have real test anxiety. Yeah. And they hate that testing, and that testing is enough to turn them off certain assignments if it's required.
Yeah.
So for you to have that coaching availability is huge. Either it's, certain, they can't remember. Maybe they haven't done strips in a couple of years and they need a refresh. Or maybe it's, hey, this is what to expect in the test. This is how it's going to be. And you've got the time. And that's a really good perk to have somebody able to sit down with them.
Yeah, we love it. It's great satisfaction all around, right? Because it's a win for everybody. It becomes a win for us because we built a relationship with the HP. HP feels excited, better prepared. No one's had a cancellation. And lots of times that's what those would have led to before, right? In other organizations and with other assignments, is it's just a straight cancellation. And that really is just the people that hurts the most, are patients.
I remember taking some of the tests, and the advice that was given to me was just don't read too much into the question. You come into the question and they say, here's the patient, what do you do first? While you're in your head, you're doing the first 5 things. You're like, I'm doing all of that. Oh, okay. So what am I going to do first? You have to really slow it down and figure out not necessarily what the right question is, but what they're looking for. Kind of break it down that way, because it feels like a trick question sometimes. It's interesting you bring that up, Michelle, because we did have that a few weeks ago, where when we were creating these custom education plans, my team member said to me, like, she did give the right answer. This is one of the answers to the questions, so it does become really challenging to say, we're just going to put our best collective wisdom together, and here's again how we coach through that. But I think that over analyzing, especially for folks that have testing anxiety, I think it just makes it even worse. So, and when you're trying to do something quickly also, right? I think the truth of it is people are trying to get on assignment usually as quickly as possible. And so we don't have those gaps in time to, maybe take the test and then wait a few weeks. So we really have tried to do the education in a manner that makes us available to them, is customized to them. So they're not reviewing like 18 chapters of something, but we really are trying to zero in on the 2 or 3 pieces or parts that they just seem to miss. Perfect. You don't want to make it a major saga just to pass the test.
Right.
Do you have any other examples that have come along your desk that you've managed to work through?
I think one of my other favorite ones, and I worked with my team to pull these together, some specific ones, because we talk about them all the time. But I think it goes back to, again, this just willingness to, when I think about a coach too, and that's why we call the calls that, right? I think about some of the best coaches, and your role as a coach is to like boost performance, right? So when you're going into those situations, I think we're always going into it as we've adapted a motto with our team. It's called EHPM, and it's every healthcare professional matters. And so how can we we coach to stay is what we say. And so we want everyone to complete their assignments, but we want them to do it in a manner that's safe and that they feel like they're valued and it's a good environment for them. And so one of the ways that we're trying to do that and really, again, create partnership with our clients is to do our healthcare professional evaluations prior to the end of assignment. So we've started delivering those in an electronic format to our clients, and those come out before the assignment's over. So they're right around in between. We know that the bulk of cancellations happen right around 5 weeks. So about between halfway through the assignment and 10 weeks. So between 7 and 10 weeks into the assignment, the evaluation goes out electronically. Well, we had one particular case a few weeks ago where the clinical nurse manager got the evaluation on the HP, who was actually struggling. And it triggered her, and these are her words, it triggered her to be like, I need to address these concerns with this HP. And so not only did she do the evaluation, but she set up time to meet with our travel nurse to sit down, go through the things that she was concerned about. And then they actually extended the HP's assignment for 4 more weeks because there was such a great response to the coaching on site that she wanted to give the HP an opportunity to really demonstrate improvement. And so again, like how cool, right? Had we not
Very
looked
cool.
for an opportunity to really trigger this, oftentimes evaluations get sent after the completion of assignment. We all know that that's a difficult process. If they're on paper, you have to print it out and like go back to the old days. And so
Yeah.
we're trying to make that a really simple process, but the timing of it is really critical, because if we can extend an assignment, I mean, just think that HP in other cases, we don't know for sure, but chances are would have got to the end of that assignment, week 13, the nurse manager would have been like, yeah, they were okay, but I don't know that I even want them
Yes.
back. Assignment would have ended. We lose the opportunity to coach, right, for increased performance. Really don't create any kind of better relationship with the facility. And so again, we look for ways that we call it the triple win, right? So the HP wins, our team wins, we feel good about the work that we're doing, and our clients win. And then ultimately patients win, right? Because we're creating clinical excellence across the team.
Absolutely. And at Newbie Bootcamp at TravCon, we have this pre-conference day where we prepare travelers who either have never traveled or just started to travel, just sort of stepping their toe into it. And one of the things that Melissa Kneibel talks about, she's one of our speakers, is she said that intercommunication piece is so huge on site. So you as a healthcare traveler, she recommends that the healthcare traveler pops their head into the manager's office or whoever, you know, is their contact at about that 4 to 6 week mark.
Yep.
And says, hey, how's it going? Are you happy with what I'm doing? Is there anything you'd like to see me improve on? And that initial proactive stance to do that can make such a difference. Yep. Oh, hey, actually, I've had a couple of concerns come my way, and let's talk about them and work through it. And you can kind of, it's interesting that you say the most cancellations happen at 5 weeks. I didn't realize that was right at that point, but that's exactly where Melissa says, that's your opportunity, that the thinking, yes or no, and cut the snake off at the head and just pop in a really positive way and say, you happy with me? Are things good? And
yes. I love that. I got to meet her now.
Oh, she's fabulous.
Because we do that, and not only just with newbies, but you know, we do offer behavioral coaching also. So if there's an issue, and oftentimes these are issues that aren't coming from the facility. I think that's one of the changes that we've seen. I know we chatted about it a couple of weeks ago. Was, you know, I do think that our HPs are getting more aware of their own mental health, of the crisis around patient safety, and an unwillingness to kind of tolerate, I guess, if you want to use that word, but they're more willing seemingly to speak up. And so we have seen, which we're delighted with, honestly, is this increase in volume of what we call escalations or issues that are coming directly from the HP. And so it has given us an opportunity to say, okay, if this is the scenario, again, if we coach to stay, what are some of the things we can teach? That includes team steps language and, you know, things that, again, if this was a regular full-time employee, some of the training that you might miss out on, right? If you're not a permanent member of the team. So if a hospital is rolling out team steps or just culture or whatever it is, that language may not make its way into the travel nurse community. And so we are trying to find ways to infuse that language into our coaching. Again, and that is one of the things I've said so many times is, you know, after the first bomb drops, it's way too late to build a relationship. So like, let's try to build the relationship up front within the first few weeks of being there. Is introduce yourself, make sure they know who you are. Because if you have a problem or there's an issue or you need to report something, nobody likes hearing bad news first. And so if you've already established some type of rapport, I just think that goes so much better.
Great point. Because 98% of the time it's positive. Oh no, we're happy with you. I've heard great things. We're good. But wow, you've just put yourself in their brain as a positive experience. Circling back, do you share those evaluations that you send to the managers? Do you share those with the travelers?
Yes. So that's one of the ways, which is, again, new process for us. But we actually, our goal around not only traveler evaluations, but around client evaluations is to share that information back to both places. And so how can we be better stewards of that data that we're getting back? We've talked about those evaluations should really be part of then what becomes a reference section, right? And
Completely.
so you have this living, breathing profile.
It's
one of the hardest
perfect
things ever
reference material.
is to list out the 5 people you want us to contact. Well, if we already have your last 4 assignments and those evaluations, it's almost like creating, I guess, a score, although, but everything is done that way, right? Health grade is that way and everything else. So I think we're used to getting scored, but we really do want our healthcare professionals to know where they're at, know where they can improve, because our goal, like I said, is to put the best clinically excellent people at the bedside, and then ensure that the environments that we're putting them into are safe and professional and team focused. And I just think it creates a win for everybody. So definitely that is, it's one thing to get feedback and then not share it. It kind of doesn't make sense.
I haven't traveled in quite a few years. I actually slowed down for a bit. I traveled for 7 years, and then I went staff for a while. So it's been a little bit of time since I've been out, and I'm not sure if this strategy works, but when I was on assignment at about week 10 or 11 or 12, I picked my favorite people on the unit, charge nurses or whatever, and I gave them, my company had a 1-page reference. What did you like about this person? How well did they do? What was their clinical capability? And name and phone number, and they put charge nurse or staff nurse or whatever. And I gave it to them, and I said, please either give it back to me if you're comfortable with it, or if you're not, just fax it straight to the company. There's the number. So I always found 2 or 3 per assignment, so that my recruiter had this before the end of the assignment for the next one. And I never had to jump through any reference hoops after that, because I'd done that. I also had the advantage of picking the people that I liked. Is that acceptable? Can travelers do that now?
I mean, when I think about references now, right, there's really no limit on who you can choose, other than that person has to be somebody that would have been in a leadership position, right, and is capable of evaluating. So, I mean, for the most part, HPs right now define who their references are. So I wouldn't think it's really any different.
They would want to pick one of their favorite charge nurses or a couple of the charge nurses. That would be acceptable.
I think that's probably normal human behavior, right? So what we try to do again, and we do have a dashboard that we do have many clients that use the dashboard. And so those evaluations would be housed directly in the dashboard for them. So whoever is managing the unit or in charge automatically has that link already. So they can complete that online, right? So we're trying to remove that whole need to fax back or scan or anything like that. So,
but it's the traveler that has to prompt it. Just before the end of their assignment, and sort of give it to the people that they feel they'll get the most favorable response from. I'm just thinking that would help reduce the amount of paperwork after the fact, sending a reference to when you're gone. Right now, I work with them. You've had a particularly great day where you saved their butt. And that's when you slide in the reference, hey, can you just fill this out?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are great pointers. I think those are all things that, if I were, I guess, not just a traveler, but I always think about, creating your own way as an employee, right? So what are some things? I used to do a 360 eval of myself. I would much the same, right? When I first went into leadership, and I'd choose 4 or 5 people from all different places in the hospital, and I would send them out this survey, and they could do it in SurveyMonkey, and I wanted to know their feedback. And so I would give those results to my leader, just as another way of saying, here's what people are saying about me. So I think any ways that we can see that or notice that people are sort of going above and beyond to really get information back, I think that's a really wise thing to do, because I do think, as competitive as this space really still is, there are ways that we can set ourselves apart, and that's definitely what we're looking to do, right? Again, it's just create a team of clinically excellent folks. So happy that you and I got to meet, Michelle. So
very much so. We're actually going to do a 2-part. So next week we'll have Valerie back, and she's going to be talking about the changing priorities of healthcare professionals and how they're navigating the staffing shortages, the whole changes that are happening across the field. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much, Valerie. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Travel Nursing and Allied Life. You can find the full show notes below or at travcon.org. Please help us out by rating our podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.